What's up, everybody? This is the Tied to the Land podcast, where we believe that everybody is tied to the land in some way, shape, or form. On this podcast, we'll explore the intimate connection that people feel with the land beneath their feet, while telling the stories of folks whose lives have been impacted by their roots to the rural lifestyle. This podcast is brought to you by Arrowhead Land Company, where their mission is to create, inspire, or advance a connection to the land in every person throughout the world. What's up, everybody? My name's Andrew Schultz. This is the Tied to the Land podcast. Today we've got a very special guest, somebody I've been looking to get in here for a while. And we're coming hot off of show season, our trade show season for the most part. So sorry that we haven't been with you guys in a little while, but we're excited today. We've got Chuck Bellatti here. Contrary to what some people might say, it's Bellatti, right, Chuck?
That's at Oklahoma-ese, baby.
So it's, I always like making sure that we say Chuck's last name right because not everybody gets it. But anyways, thank you for joining us today.
You bet. You know, if you say Chuck Bellatti, that means you probably don't know me very well.
That's right. That's right.
I'm looking forward to being here with you today.
Yeah, man. Bellatti, not Bellatti. Okay. Anyways, let's move on here. So, Chuck, you're fourth generation rancher, right? Fourth
generation.
It's incredible, man. Before we started the podcast, you were telling me about something about what happens in the first and the second and the third, and I want you to share that because I think that's really cool.
Well, in family businesses, and it holds true in ranching, it's there's an adage that says the first generation starts something, is the starter. It starts putting something together. The second generation usually takes the ball and runs with it and advances it. The third generation loses it. So the fact that I get to be the fourth generation to steward something that was birthed in my family in 1930 is pretty special because wow. I'm looking forward to making it to 2030 to say that it's been 100 years. That's
awesome, man. So you told me before you didn't plan on necessarily having to save the ranch or getting into ranching, or you had a career path of your own prior to working on the ranch. So tell me what that was like for you, shouldering the weight of your family's legacy and having to keep that alive and making sure that survives, not just you but generations to come.
Well, it wasn't a burden that was put on me. As you mentioned, I went to Oklahoma State, and I'm old. I graduated in 1988. Then my wife and I moved to Texas. We moved to DFW, and we spent 28 years there. And as we became empty nesters, I found myself driving the 250 to 60 miles for a 3-day weekend, and those became more regular. And as I was approaching 50 years old, my mother made a comment about my age, and I said, I've been exceedingly abundantly blessed. I said, really only have one dream left. And she said, I bet I know what it is. I said, well, shoot, what do you think it is? She said, you want to live at the ranch. I said, I do. And I said, you're the one who can make that happen. I said, so what do you say? She said, let me think about it.
So mothers know best.
So
right?
it wasn't the red carpet wasn't rolled out or anything like that. But my wife and I did move there at the end of 2016, kind of almost like in an Abrahamic type journey. It was just time to come, and we had no plan. So fortunately, we had enough margin in our life that we could lease a house from the ranch or the family and begin to explore what was next. And it didn't take very long. The ranch, my great-grandfather was a Hereford cow man, and so we had probably 650 mama cows, and then my grandfather followed the trend and started crossbreeding and had black baldies, and so with Angus bulls or Brangus bulls. And then in the third generation with no plan, and markets have a part in that, the ranch just with paid for cows and paid for grass wasn't making any money and was losing a significant amount 5 years in a row. And for those accountants that are listening, or people, if you don't make money, you became, in the agriculture world, it becomes a hobby farm. So you lose any deductions, depreciation, expense write-offs. So the trust company, which was overseeing the ranch at the time, basically hotboxed him and tried to get him to sell it because trust companies basically, don't make a whole lot of money holding dirt. They want liquidity.
Sure.
Well, we were there for about 45 days, and I said, if this is our biggest and best asset, and the trust, rather than selling the ranch, we leased it out to some people to run stockers, and they did a great job, and those people have become friends of mine. And but you're looking at somebody else using your asset, and I'm like, if this is our biggest and best asset, and we're getting X amount of dollars per acre rent, I said, I bet I can come up with a better plan. So that's what I did.
That's awesome, man. So you really quite literally took the bull by the horns and you made it happen.
Well, it was providential in the fact that at the same time, I had thought I had structured a deal where in my former life would continue to pay me. I was a sales guy in the graphic arts industry, and I helped the last company that I worked for sign a big contract. And as soon as I got it signed, they fired me. So, I thought that was just going to be something that was kind of annuity for me. So, my response to that is I needed something to do. I was bored. So I went and got a real estate license.
Yeah.
And getting introduced to a gentleman that he's the third generation of a 12,000 acre ranch. And they have been successful at it, and he leases 2 other 10,000 acre ranches. I got introduced to him and asked him if he would mentor me. At the same time, I went to work for a guy Sherman Shanklin, you've heard his name. He was Remax of Green Country, and he was in Nowhat, Oklahoma. And his mother taught me Sunday school. My great-grandmother taught him Sunday school. And he sold farm and ranch. And farm and ranch stuff is basically what he sold. And I got my real estate license at the same time, and basically had a perfect storm where someone was teaching me sharing with me their experience of running a ranch, and then someone who had an Oklahoma State animal science degree, but was selling and successfully for 30 years farm and ranch stuff. So the mesh of that is something I couldn't have planned. So it was divine. Of studying grasses, soil maps, usage, highest and best. It put me on a fast track.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I mean, you talked earlier, you kind of view yourself, and we joke around about it internally here. You and I is what I mean internally, but, you consider yourself an older fellow, but you had mentorship in your life that has helped mold you into who you are now. I mean, I've heard you speak so highly of Sherman and, some of the other folks in your life who have poured into you. What do you feel like has been the most valuable part of that in having and seeking mentorship, and then now being in a position to provide that to others?
Well, that's a great question. During my time in Texas, one of my bosses became a mentor in all things in my life besides the business world. I mean, he was a spiritual mentor. He was someone I look to for counsel of raising my kids and being a husband. So I think that, that's just, if you look biblically, generations are supposed to pour into generations. Well, because of the Industrial Revolution and the fact that we spread out across the country, we don't have maybe that core, your grandparents or your uncle or whoever might have done that once upon a time is not necessarily in your life. And I think it's foolish to not, or arrogant to not say, there's somebody that's doing something that I want to do. Mm-hmm. So I've been on both sides of the equation. And I think you heard me say this, and I'll give credit to this guy named Mike Ford and all he said it. The success of any or failure of any mentoring relationship mostly depends on the hunger and the willingness of the mentee. Mm-hmm. Because, no matter how wise they are, unless you ask for it, unless you pursue it, they're not going to give it to you. And that's one of the hallmarks of my life. I'm not afraid to tell people I don't know, and I'm not afraid to ask for help. And I think that when you ask people for help or assistance or guidance, and you ask with humility, that most people are proud to give it to you and want to help you.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I like to be able to return that favor.
Yeah, man, that's really great. And I have the pleasure of seeing you do that all the time. And something I want to get into specifically with you is that you're working with a lot of younger landowners and younger couples. That's not the only demographic of person that you work with, of course, being in the ranch real estate space. But I really feel like our society is starting to wake up a little bit. And I feel like maybe you've got some boots on the ground experience that you can talk about. But I see people gravitating back to a simpler, slower paced lifestyle, wanting to get out of the city and into the country. They want to have chickens. They want a place for their kids to run around without having to be in the streets and traffic. And I mean, I really see, and maybe it's just the type of people that I resonate with and follow, but I see this shift in society where people are starting to go back to some of what you said, where our grandparents and great grandparents, there was more of a family hierarchy, and I see some of that myself. What are you seeing?
Well, I definitely have since 2020 in the COVID world. I mean, we definitely have in the state of Oklahoma seen people that have wanted to leave more urban areas and have the land ownership is and I'll is one of the last few true grit bastions of that you can make something out of it. I mean, most of the people that I deal with, if they're not already in the ranch space, they're wanting to do exactly that, to get to move away and have more control of their own environment. And so, yes, I agree with you 100%. And I'm from Nowata, Oklahoma, and it's one of the 5 poorest counties in the state. It's 12,000 people or less. But I really enjoy sharing that country with people because there's no zoning in the county, there's no building permits required, and there's no lot split requirements. Why is that important? Well, because, you get to decide what you do with your land. If you want to build a shop, you build a shop. You don't have to ask. If you want to sell, you buy 40 acres and you want to give 5 acres or 1 acre to your kids or to your parents and build them something, you don't have to ask anybody's permission. And the closer we get to even the Tulsa metro area, that is not a truism. So that's pretty special, and I hope it stays that way in some of these more remote counties.
Yeah, you and me both, man. I feel like that's probably the most special thing about the state of Oklahoma as a whole is it's relatively unrestricted in terms of what you can do with your land. And, I've had the pleasure of selling land in several different states, and Oklahoma is by far the loosest. I use the term loose with their requirements and restrictions, and I think it's great, and that's why people are flocking here to this state, because people don't want to be restricted. They don't want government entities telling them how to live their lives and how to raise their children and where they can put their shed, in correlation to the house, and if they can have a fence or not, things like that. And I love that about this state.
Yeah, it's pretty special, and we lived in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, and we had what I call our starter mansion. We had a home on an acre in Prosper, Texas, I moved there because it was a small town, and it's exploded now. I got letters because I bored underneath my sidewalk, and we laid a pipe that went to a ditch, being like I didn't have permission to do that. I'm like, water was pooling by my house.
Yeah,
I'm trying to take care of the property here. I didn't know I needed permission. So that's just I'm reminded of that, and I'm thankful that I don't have that restriction in my life anymore.
No doubt.
It's pretty cool.
So what was it like when you were living there? I mean, I imagine a piece of you was always missing. Like, you elaborated earlier on how you found yourself wanting to get up to the ranch. You had a 2 or 3 day weekend, and there's a lot of people I think right now that might be listening to this that can resonate with that, right? Where they have this vision of where they want to be, but work or family or some other calling has them in a place that maybe it's not their long-term home, or maybe they're just not comfortable there right now. How is that for you? And what would you tell people who might be in that scenario where they're dreaming about being on the ranch, but they're just not there yet?
Well, I mean, that was something I dreamed of as a little kid, and then just, it was kind of rebuffed. So, I didn't know that it would ever happen. And so, but yes, there's a part of me, and that, I didn't recognize it as at the time. But when when my son was about 5 years old, I would have been mid-30s. So this would be early 2000s. My wife thought I was insane because I brought home a 1993 Jeep Wrangler, and it was a third vehicle. And she's like, "Why?" I said, "I don't know." But
and your wife's a pretty smart gal. I mean,
yeah, she thought I was having some midlife crisis. But basically, that Jeep Wrangler, and I always lived sort of on the edge of the Metroplex in McKinney and then Prosper. So there were gravel roads, and there was enough places that I could take my son to teach him how to shoot a BB gun at beer cans and then 22s. And so I was able to find a little bit of home and pass on things that I did with my dad and my grandfather.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So, it's there, whether it's a gun range or going to the city park and taking your kids fishing. I think it's if it's where you came from, especially, it's in you. And you want to pass that on. So there are ways to make it happen, and you don't have to, that Jeep Wrangler cost $5,000, and so it was a decent little chunk of money, but in the overall scheme of things, I still have it, and it still runs. So it was maybe one of my best investments ever.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think you find a way to get small doses of the thing you're seeking, right? Yeah. And that's exactly what you did there. And I found, and I want to hear how you feel personally, but I've got some land, and I long to share it with as many people as I possibly can. And I think that for those of you longing for a dose of the country lifestyle, you'll find that most folks that own land or that have access to land are willing to share those experiences with you, whether it's, tagging along on a horse for the day, or coming and going on a hunt, or just drinking coffee on the front porch. I mean, whatever that looks like for you, I've found personally that most landowners are willing to share that.
Yeah, and that's but it's based on trust, and it's based on people. Most landowners will not like trespassers, and
right.
The place that I get to steward's fairly large and has a county road, and I have people that come to my house, and they're just not very wise.
Yeah,
I mean, it's and part of it maybe because because I'm a business guy or a sales guy. I mean, don't come to my house and say, I need to hunt your pond. No, you don't need to hunt my pond. And I looked you up on Facebook after you left, and several people that know me. You should have got an introduction and made an appointment.
Sure.
So it's about respect, and it's about trust. Because, I mean, and part of that is, we're running cattle, and we have wild Mustangs, and just the liability of having a fire or somebody not shutting gates. So I mean, the trust is earned, and and some people think that it's rude when you say no, but it's a business too. Mm-hmm. And yes, but I've certainly have enjoyed having my nephews and my nieces be able to come and enjoy catching bass and shooting their first deer, and we go to the gun range, and I do like doing that.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Yeah, if you're a stranger, you don't want to walk up to most rural folks' homes and just come knocking on the door, that might be a liability. But if you go to church with someone, or you go to school with someone, or, you've got a friend or a relationship, and you know that they have access to the outdoor lifestyle and you want a piece of that, more than likely they're going to be happy to give you a glimpse of what that looks like.
Yeah, just
ease up.
Yeah, just don't come to my door at 5:30 at night and going, "Can I hunt tomorrow, man?"
Yeah,
I don't know you.
Yeah, you got to be a little more tactful than that. That's for sure.
That's true. So,
no, that's great. And also, you talked about closing gates earlier. For all you city folk out there, if you find yourself walking through a gate on a ranch or any property for that matter, and it was closed before you got there, be sure to close it behind you, right?
Yeah, that is true. And if you go for a ride with me, you may find that I'm a hypocrite because I may leave one open because I know what's going on there and you don't. But yes, that's just the code of the West.
Yeah.
If it's closed when you go through it, make sure you close it back.
Yeah, and the reason for that, for anybody listening who doesn't understand why, I'm sure a lot of you do, but sometimes, believe it or not, ranchers have cattle who are in a specific area for a specific reason. And when you leave a gate open, cattle are curious creatures and they can get out of the gate. So
yeah, they sometimes can, even when the gate's closed, they'll find a way to get into a different pasture or get out on the road. So we don't need any help mixing them up.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Well, I want to shift gears here for a second. I've enjoyed talking about the ranch with you. We've referenced your real estate career, and I want to congratulate you. You were the Arrowhead Land Company 2023 top producer. So what that means is Chuck was the top agent in the company in 2023. And so congratulations, man.
Thank
well
you.
Deserved, and I know you worked really hard at this. But you're an ALC, and I'm actually an ALC. And ALC stands for Accredited Land Consultant. And I know that RLI, or better known as the Realtors Land Institute, has had a big impact on you personally and professionally. And so I wanted you to elaborate on what it means to be a part of the Realtors Land Institute, what it means to have your ALC, and what that's been able to do for your business.
Well, that's I am proud. It was, again, a Sherman Shanklin deal. In my first week of joining him, I went to an RLI meeting, and, Sherman was a big believer in continuing your education, and I think that's vital. I mean, I don't want to sell houses in town. So I want to serve the niche of selling farms, ranches, recreational and rural residential properties, and the first meeting and those people resonated with me, and so to differentiate myself, I set out on the track of getting that accreditation to be a land consultant recognized by the RLI, and I did a lot of it in 2021. When it was online, I prefer in person, but and then in fact, RLI is how I met Will Bellis. I had talked to him once before, and we had a deal that didn't culminate. But the first time we ever talked, we were both in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, at Land Week U. I had one class left to take, and he went to get his whole deal knocked out. And I think that's when we began a relationship, and then. I was a slacker. I didn't take my test or do my portfolio, and so you were helpful in getting me across the finish line. I was talking to a gentleman this morning. He is making a bid on a property that I have listed, and he wanted to talk about. He has a piece of property he's putting up as collateral, and he wants to know how he can do a 1031 after he. Even if it sells after he closes on what he hopes to buy, get under contract today. And I said, the words I want to tell you are, I think, reverse 1031. I said, but have you done a 1031 before? And he said, I did when I bought this piece of property. I would call the expert, but I've taken a 15-hour course that tells me I know those are the words I think you need to call and ask about doing a reverse 1031 to be able to apply that to this transaction. So he typically works with another realtor who lives in my area, and she's a nice lady, and she fancies herself as a land salesperson, but she's not. And I'm not trying to criticize her, and she wouldn't have known the answer to that question. So just the going through the coursework, and then you meet the people. And again, I think this may be my last Sherman reference, but Sherman said you need to go to RLI because eagles fly with eagles, or lions run with lions. So. Those are the people that are making the time commitment and the financial investment to become an accredited land consultant are obviously serious about their business, and they're not part-timers. So you're dealing with the best of the best.
Yeah. So there's a lot of part-time agents, to what you were just saying, who they try to dabble. I'll use the word. They try to dabble in the business, and there's a lot of folks who maybe their specialty is residential or some other area, and they also try to dabble in this business. And that's one demographic of agent. And then you have ALCs and members of RLI and people who really take our business serious, and they take their education serious, and it's a totally different experience. I mean, in most, I want to say, average consumers wouldn't understand that until they've worked with both people,
I agree with you. And that's actually the one thing that I'll throw some mud at RLI. I think that they've done a poor job of marketing themselves, and the basically the product that they've created by having an accredited land consultant and having awards that recognize people for their sales. But it is frustrating to me to see somebody in my world, and there are really good real estate agents and ladies that I like, and they sell homes, and they sell a lot of them. But then I see them outside of the city limits, and they've got 100 acres listed, and it's different than saying I grew up. My grandparents were farmers and ranchers. It's different than somebody who's in it every day. And first I was hesitant to kind of share my ranch life, because I didn't want people to think that I was part-time in it. Mm-hmm. Because real estate, I'm very blessed. This is another cool thing. At the ranch, my cowboy, my ranch foreman, he's the fourth generation of his family to work and live on the ranch. So cool. Their family is tied to my family, and he has a son will be 1 in July, and he's the fifth generation of his family. So they do, and so that family has they grew up. There's generations that have grown up coming to that ranch and working on it. So they do a tremendous job of caring for it and supporting me. And so there's there's mornings early that I do stuff there, but the real estate is the only thing I do every day.
Yeah. We're talking about other agents and the ranching, and you and I have joked about this before, but it seems to be that there's a lot of pretend cowboys out there anymore. And I don't know if Yellowstone sparked that, or if people wanting to be in the farm and ranch real estate space kind of sparked that, or maybe a combination of both. But what are your feelings on these cowboys that you see out there?
Well, I would never insult a cowboy and tell them that I was a cowboy. I just get to steward a ranch, but I certainly like it. Those folks talk about lifestyle. We know how to sell your property because we live this lifestyle. Well, it's not a lifestyle for me. It is the life I live every day, and it just is. They make me laugh when they show up. They want to tell you how many cows they have, and that's the key. When I was raised by my grandparents, you never ask a man how many cows he has, because that's akin to asking them how much money you have in the bank.
Right.
So, nobody likes that guy that shows up and goes, "Yeah, I got this much in my real estate or my investment portfolio." Well, that's what they're doing.
Yeah.
And they want to tell you about how costly it is to buy feed and mineral. Yeah, every business has costs. So why should your business be any different? And you don't. I've never seen you show up at a meeting and said, this is our overhead.
No,
that's not what you do.
Yeah, they need to spend less money on bedazzled skinny jeans and more money on feed, I guess.
Well,
Anyways,
that's a little sidebar, but yeah, at least it provides some of us entertainment value.
yeah, absolutely, man, absolutely. But there's so much ego in this business, and I feel like in the farm and ranch space, there's mostly humility, but then there's also a lot of ego as well. And I think it's comparable in that way. If you're the guy that has to walk into the room and flex on everybody else, then I'm learning a lot about you already. You know what I mean? And so I think there's something to be said about being the guy in the room that's humble and quiet, and he's not talking about how many cows he has, and he's not talking about what's in his investment portfolio, and he just shows up to learn something from somebody else that might be there,
Well, I love sayings and I love little stories. So
I actually have a note. What are some of your favorite life sayings? But it's awesome because you've just sprinkled them in here.
Well, I mean, and I'm going to say a bad word, but my uncle was in the car business at one point in time, and whether he said this to me or not, I'm going to give him credit for it. Why did you trade for that? And I'll sell it because there's an ass for every seat. Or my dad's famous for saying that's the reason Baskin Robbins has 31 flavors, because not everybody likes strawberry chocolate vanilla. Mm-hmm. And there's going to be buyers and sellers that flexing or that stuff makes them feel good. And so they're going to work with them. They're not my type of people. And sure. I think that's the hardest thing in my other life. There was sort of a finite group of customers, and so you had to find out. There was a sales theory that said basically go for the no. Find out if you're gonna ever be able to work with them, and if you're not, move on. Don't waste your time on that. So, not everybody's going to want to list their property with me. Not everybody's going to use me as a buyer's agent, and that's okay because. I want to work with. I also find that like people attract like people. So, I really have had very few poor experiences in the real estate business with a buyer or seller. There's been one or two, but people that work with me are not maybe a candidate to work with those other folks because my style or my personality or my experience, just meshes with theirs better. So. I had to tell a young lady that when I was trying to hire her in a management role that, she's like, I don't like the rejection. I said, well, that's just part of it, and you're going to have rejection anytime you're making a call or a pitch. Not everybody's going to like you. And the sooner that you can embrace that and just, don't let it set you back, just keep on going. And yep. The people, it's the story. You get knocked down, you got to get back up, and it's tough. It's disappointing. I had disappointment in the last couple of weeks. I wanted a listing, and I didn't do a good job. I didn't assess the situation correctly. So, again, this is a Sherman statement. He would say, "Now, what can we learn from that?" Mm-hmm. So, what can we learn from that? Well, I learned some different things, and which I'll be talking to Tyler about putting together some stuff for me for the next time on one of those deals.
Oh man, TG, it's your fault.
Yeah, he didn't arm me properly.
Yeah, what Chuck learned is that it's your fault, TG.
No, it was Chuck's fault. Chuck should have had more bullets in his gun.
No, man, that's you're never going to bat 1,000. No. And I think that the most successful people in life, they just keep trudging forward when they get pulled back or they get knocked down. And at church recently we were talking about Moses and the Israelites and the parting of the Red Sea and how God commanded them to go forward, and I can imagine being in their shoes and looking at the Red Sea and saying, what do you mean go forward? And as you know, the Red Sea parts and they go forward, but they had to trust in the process. They had to take a step. And I think that this business, the ranching business, whatever it is in your life that you're enduring or going through, you just got to step forward.
Yeah, I mean, and you mentioned not batting 1,000. I mean, it's an average. It's an averages game. I mean, And you mentioned 2023, and my average was very high in 2023. Came into 2024, and I had several things bust and go quiet title. And I don't like not having activity, and I don't like not having closings. I mean, for personal pride, and this is. I like cash flow too, but you just keep going, and things are green grass and sunshine have made the activity pick up, and it's going to be a good year. It just started off a little slow because it's averages. I mean, you kind of have foul balls. You're going to have a day where you don't see the ball really well, and you're going to miss it. But so you just keep going to the plate.
You said something to me recently that you don't know this, but I've stewed on a lot. And you came to me and you said, I've been number one a lot in my life, but I've never been number one 2 years in a row.
That's true.
And I'm sharing that, and I hope you don't mind me sharing that. But, you hear about sports teams and how hard it really is to win a repeat championship and to do anything back-to-back. I mean, it is a tough thing to do. And so, like you're saying, you're never going to bat 1,000, but if you can keep that average high and you can keep one foot in front of the other, that definitely is going to help.
Yeah, and the nice thing about the real estate business is, one phone call can change it like that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so but you have to be, you have to have the right attitude, and the attitude is the struggle, I think, for everybody. I mean, if it's not going well, and when that phone rings, you can't answer a hello.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know who it is. I mean, every time you get an opportunity, you need to treat people well, and it could be a guy wanting 2 acres in a mobile home, but if you don't want to deal with them, refer them. But and I think that's also, I've been blessed since joining Arrowhead. In the beginning, and I think it was a valuable experience. I had to go list a lot of little houses and little commercial buildings and lots, and I got to do lots of transactions. But in the last 2 years, I've been able to basically focus on what I want to focus on. I haven't listed anything in the city limits. If folks or friends want to do that, that's not what I want to focus on. And in my former life, I was in the printing business, so I did high-end, high-volume printing and direct mail. Like I did the NFL Sunday Ticket for DirecTV for 2 different advertising agencies 2 years in a row. That's millions of pieces. I printed for Invesco for 10 years. Their 5 largest funds, semi-annual and annual reports, when annual reports are a big deal. But when people will call me and go, hey, I want you I got a print job for you. Oh, really? What do you got? What do we do for you? Well, I got my business cards and my letterhead. So I appreciate you thinking of me, but that's not what I do. Mm-hmm. It's not what my company does. Mm-hmm. So I can send you to somebody who does that. So the time and then the support of the company, our company, Arrowhead Land Company, has allowed me to basically focus on the niche, which I think has allowed my business to grow in that area. So it's just about a return on time. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think something important worth talking about is that you paid your dues, and, to somebody looking at you now, they probably look at you and think that you were always at this point in your business. You're always playing with farms and ranches and what you wanted to do and what you wanted to focus on. But I've seen time and time and time and time again in this business where if you're new and you're getting into it, and smaller deals or smaller opportunities or things that you don't really want to do seem to be all that's coming your way, that's how you start in this business,
Absolutely.
And you almost have to earn your keep. And I don't know why it happens that way. It doesn't seem to matter your network, your sphere of influence, where you come from. You just start with smaller opportunities and it grows from there. And then when you get further along and established and solidified in your business, then you have the bandwidth and the flexibility to decide, this is what I want to focus on, and then I'm going to let someone else focus on these things.
Right. I mean, it's just, I think a lot of life since in terms of agriculture. I mean, I think that if you've mentioned church and we've quoted Moses and Abraham. I mean, I think that, when Jesus taught parables about seeds, and, nobody, most people in the farm and ranch world, you don't usually get to start off with 12,000 acres or 6,500 acres. I mean, you start off this and you build your business, and that's just the way it is. And so you just be faithful with what you have, and I think that you're right. I wish that when we got to do our panel discussion at our annual sales meeting, that I would have told the people. I've been selling. I mean, I sold stuff when I was in college. My dad had a company in Stillwater, and so I sold in the summer and sometimes for him for that. But as an adult, since I was 22 years old, and so that's 35 years that I've sold and lived on commission. And at times I've been the sales manager or VP of sales and had 2 jobs. But I've only had a real estate license for 6 years. This month is my 6th year of having a license. I didn't start with working for a brokerage until May of 2018. So and this is another thing that I think that people need to embrace. You ever heard of the 10,000 hour rule? Mm-hmm. The 10,000 hour rule, just so everybody knows what we're talking about, is 10,000 hours says you should become an expert in whatever you are in 10,000 hours. Well, if you think about it in terms of the average work week of 40 hours a week, that's 5 years to become an expert. So I think I got to cut that in half a little bit because I'd sold my whole life and done business. And then I had a really good teacher. So in 2.5 years, my mentor in the real estate business died. So I did cut it in half because I had to take, kind of run in his boots or the path that he had trod. And I'm not bragging on the numbers. I just want I want to illustrate what you said. Let's say I started in May of 2018, just trying to find the bathroom, the coffee pot, where to get business cards and buy some signs. And I did 5 deals between May and the end of the year. And I think I sold $1 million. Okay. So 2019, I'll say, was my first year, and I sold just a tick under 7 million. So we'll say that's 7 million. The next year, it was 10 million, and then the next year after that it was 16 million, and then I repeated that number, and then last year was almost those 2 years combined. Mm-hmm. So it is building blocks. Those years of selling in pretty much a specific area, allowed me to become kind of a go-to, and because I was faithful to take care of the little things. And the first house I listed was in Delaware, Oklahoma, and it was $30,000, and I sold it on a note and mortgage, an owner carry. So don't despise humble beginnings.
Yeah, absolutely. We all start somewhere, and you were talking about it takes 10,000 hours to be an expert at something. And for all you part-time agents listening, or folks who are doing this part-time for one reason or another, it's going to take double the time.
It is.
It takes longer to reach that 10,000 hours if you're only putting in 10 or 20 hour work weeks.
Yeah, and I'm going to piggyback back to another question that you asked about ROI. Most brokerages, if you're trying to sell farm and ranch or rural real estate, you're not getting a whole lot of good training because, it's outside the box. Mm-hmm. And as someone who I feel like got good training from the broker that I work for and from RLI, it is frustrating at times to deal with folks that aren't educated in our business, and that even when they say that they are working for a land company, they're sloppy. And do your stuff, mind your P's and Q's, and learn it. If you don't know, ask, because if you want to know how to write a better contract or what you should have done different, ask somebody who's done it. I'll share it with you, but I'm not going to give it to you. I'm not going to give it to you unless you ask, because otherwise you just think I'm picking on you. Yeah,
no doubt. Yeah, there's a lot of mediocrity out there, and not just in the real estate business, but just in the world as a whole. And I believe it's easy to shine. You show up, you be professional, you look professional, you understand the paperwork and the things that you're trying to educate someone else about. You know, I've listened to people try to explain a contract and they don't even understand. You can tell they haven't really read it themselves, you know, and then just having enough experience on top of that to be able to run people through different scenarios and here's what you might think about, or here's what I would do here, or you should consider these 2 or 3 things. I mean, but it starts with professionalism. It starts with a full-time effort, understanding the business first and foremost, to your point, and then having enough relevant experience to be able to intelligently teach upon it, you know? So, yep. And that comes through just full-time effort and consistency and putting one foot in front of the other.
Here's one of my quotes for you, and I'll give credit to my dad. Half the battle is showing up.
Amen.
You can't shoot him from the couch. You can't catch him from the couch. You can't sell it from the couch. Yeah. You can't show it from the couch. So you got to get your butt out of bed and go just to show up. If you show up, good things can happen.
Yeah, man. What are we're going to wrap this up here pretty soon, but I want to know, what are some of your favorite memories on the ranch? That could be with your wife. That could be as a kid. Wow. Is there anything in particular that stands out to you or makes you emotional, or something that just when you're sitting on the porch and you're looking at that place, and I know you're not sitting on the porch very often because you're working, but what are the memories that stick out to you the most?
That's a great question. I'm glad you asked it. I can tell you it's the first place that I ever caught a fish. It's the first place that I ever rode a horse. It's where I asked my wife to marry me. It's the first place that my kids ever caught a fish or rode a horse. So those are milestones in people's lives or in my family's life. So it's those are the special things. And since I've been back, I've bought, we run yearlings, and so to see the first load of cattle come in that I purchased, and then see those loads of cattle go out,
yeah,
and then there's other things that have provided a return on the ranch that I'm proud of, that may not mean anything to anybody else, but they're special to me.
That's amazing, man. I've got a favorite memory on your ranch, and I have to talk about it because I'm not a great storyteller, but this is a story that I love to tell people because, if you're listening to this and you're watching Chuck, he's a composed, business-like, just good dude, but he's also got a sense of humor, and he's also got a wild side. And so anyways,
got a little fire.
He's got a little fire in him, and so does his horse, apparently. So we were out there shooting some photos and getting some video footage of Chuck doing his thing on the ranch, and this was early on in Arrowhead's business, and so we were just getting some content for our use and to provide Chuck with for his business, and it was really great getting to see him do his thing outside of real estate, and all the people that played a hand that day in helping you on the ranch. And my brother Matt was with us, and Matt, bless his heart, he's a good dude, and
the best.
He really is the best, and he was trying to be helpful, and he went to go open a gate for Chuck, who was on his horse, and real ranchers, they can just bend right down and open the gate while on their horse, but Matt startled Chuck's horse.
I was bent over, unlatching the gate.
And next thing you know, Chuck is just riding a bucking horse. And he's saying all kinds of names. And his sunglasses go flying, and he's trying to calm his horse down, and I'm watching this whole thing unfold, and Matt's just like, and it was just one thing led to another, and we finally calmed down. But I'll just never forget that. And in Chuck's defense, and in the horse's defense, tensions were already high because you'd spent quite a bit of time, you and your partner, your ranch hand, running around, or riding around rather, trying to gather up these cattle, and you almost had them where you wanted to go. And then there were guys out there fixing a water line.
A gas line.
Or a gas line,
Oil and
excuse
gas
me,
guys.
and making a bunch of ruckus and commotion, and then the cattle dispersed because they got scared, and your horse could feel that. And So, anyways, that's my favorite memory out on your ranch that I'll never forget was you having to ride it out on that horse, and Matt being terrified, and me not knowing what to do. But I love telling that story.
Lost the sunglasses, but stayed on.
Yeah, you did stay on.
So that was that was day 2 with the oil and gas people there, and I had called their boss and told them that they should not be there until a certain time, and they showed back up, and I even called them while we were trying to bring these new cattle into pen and said, you need to get them out of here. They said they'll take care of it, and they didn't. And as you saw, the cattle dispersed, and then I rode around there, and they're sitting there with their feet on the truck, on the dash of their truck. I kind of lost my cool there.
You were not happy.
I was not. And then I rode over to shut that gate, and I was bent over, and Matt came up between me and the gate and scared my horse. It was a that's a good memory, but yeah, it was funny. He's like, "That's the brokest horse I've ever seen." I said, "Well, he doesn't like surprises."
Yeah, there's a lot of us that don't like surprises,
Yep.
and I guess your horse is included in that. But, man, I want to wrap this up by talking about one more thing. You and your wife, and I hope you don't mind me sharing this, you guys recently made a special investment. And I'd like for you to just touch on that. And, we've talked a lot about the ranch, but then there's something else meaningful about a piece of real estate that y'all have just brought into your family. And so if you don't mind, I'd like for you to just elaborate on that a little bit. And you sent me a picture the other day, happy as could be. And I love that. It made me smile. So how did that investment into real estate, why is it important? And tell us about it.
Well, again, it's another generational thing, and my wife and I did purchase a piece of property in a little mountain town in Colorado called Green Mountain Falls. And my grandparents on my other side, the non-ranching, the newspaper side, had a house there from 1955 till the mid to late 70s. And there's actually, video. My wife is, I've only known her since I was 3. Our parents were friends. We were classmates, and she's my first girlfriend. And we did have a little 4-year hiatus before we got back together and got married at the ripe old age of 22 and 23. But we took our children to this area while they were growing up, and been blessed to have some good years, as I've mentioned. And it allowed us to fulfill the dream of having a place there, but also, we could have put it in the stock market, could have put it in a CD, but I just think that real estate is, from an emotional standpoint and from a sentimental and family standpoint, it's very special. It's going to be the ranch is in an LLC. I have other siblings and cousins that each have a part of it, so my kids will get shares of that, and we'll see how it develops on that. But this is something that a tangible piece of real estate that I will pass on to my children, and their families can continue. And they'll be the 4th or 5th generation to go to that area. And it's just, if I could go back and talk to younger me, that would be about the only thing that I would do different, is invest in real estate as a younger person, other than owning a home, is either buying a rent house or buying, speculating and buying lots or something like that, because it is, proven that it is one of the best ways to invest and make wealth. And so I feel good about doing it because it's money that the funds that could have been, it's just from a business standpoint, it's just part of my portfolio now. Sure. But from a generational thing and from a sentimental thing, it's going to be a gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah, man. Legacy. I feel like if you could describe everything we've talked about today, so much to do with legacy and, how you were mentored and how you're mentoring and how you're carrying on the legacy of the ranch and how you're creating new legacies, for your family in Colorado. And I mean, I love talking with you. You know that. I love listening to the stories, and I just appreciate you coming on here today. I think there's a lot of good stuff that people should be able to garner from this conversation, and I'm thankful for you and to know you and to have you on the team here at Arrowhead Land Company. And I just thank you, man.
Well, I appreciate you having me on, and it's been a good journey, and it's gonna continue to be a good journey.
Yes, sir. I'm Andrew Schultz, and this is Chuck Bellatti, not Bellatti, and we're signing off. Thank you for joining us on the Tied to the Land podcast.